Out of State DMing podcast. I'm your host, Lux Blackheart, and your co-host. Or my co-host.
It's Gian.
Today's episode will center around gnomes.
Yes, the small people, not as small as Faye, no, not even as small as a hobbit, but they're large enough to rip your head off.
Yes, with
So
the
exactly how tall are they?
average height 3.5 feet,
So they
three
can, so
and
they
a half
can,
feet. No, sorry,
they can
not even
attach
three
your.
and a half, 3.5. So
So what you're saying is that they can attach to your face like an alien face hugger and rip it off.
just yeah, does they are they are puntable size. Not as puntable as a halfling, but they're still puntable.
Gnome tossing.
Yeah, they're
It's
also
a sport that
relatively
all
light.
races play.
The average weighs around 45 pounds, so they're light. They're small and they are light. Um,
And there's exactly four variations, and everybody else just uses the same type.
pretty much. There's four base gnomes, and then variants of those gnomes. Does you have the classic rock gnome, followed by the forest gnome, and then the deep gnome. Uh,
And everybody uses those three.
Pretty much, yeah. Because when you get into other sources, you have variants of all three uh, that differ slightly in culture, names, and actual statistics. Um, for instance, in one world, you can actually play a deep gnome without having any level adjustments. Well, normally it comes with like +3 level adjustment, so they're not necessarily playable unless you're hopping into a mid to high tier campaign or the DM starting everyone at a higher level to accommodate for level adjustments. The fourth one that has its own variants are the Tinker Gnomes. Its two variants are kind of how the Forest Gnome and the Deep Gnome are just modified rock gnomes. The Mad Gnome and the Wild Gnome are just slightly modified versions of the Tinker Gnome. There's like the Tinker Gnome uh, is more true to the gnome that likes to build crap. The whole gnomes like bells and whistles trope fits the Tinker Gnome a lot more than it does the Rock Gnome, even though the Rock Gnome is the default standard gnome. So they have all sorts of random mechanical doohickeys while it's being powered by magic, steam, or some other thing. They can figure out how to make it do it. The Mads are the I want to be alone when I do my weird science bullcrap. I like, let's go to this secluded island or go to this far region here where there's no one to bother me because they want to be alone. Wild gnomes are I'm gonna go about being in the woodlands and in the wilds doing stuff. And they're also responsible for certain random plant monsters and plant species and certain random animals. So some of the tropes of apparitions, how like, oh, this no one really knows where this creature came from, but it's an apparition. It just randomly exists here or here. Why is this plant now able to have thoughts, uproot itself, and walk, and be so good at killing? If you're in the world of Forgotten Realms, there's a good chance that apparition or that weird plant was once a science experiment by wild gnomes. And I'm not even kidding. It says in their descriptors, scriptures, and that's something that they've actually done is create random things because they could.
They're gnomes.
Yeah, they're
Of
gnomes,
course
but
they
why
do.
not? So it goes heavily into the whole, if you want a science based, uh like more rooted in science, whether it be weird science or not, the Tinker Gnome and the Mad and Wild Gnome are the perfect gnomes for it because that's their entire society. So it's like, if there's a campaign that's like, why is there like a lot of access to gunpowder? Why is there more guns? Why is there actual like steam powered engines? That doesn't fit. Yes, it does. Not just because there's campaigns that literally have like Renaissance era or like industrial era stuff. Tinker Gnomes are the perfect example of
So what you're
why that
saying,
exists.
so what you're saying is that Tinker Gnomes are the catalyst for steampunk.
Exactly. It 100% steampunk. I think steam powered boats, steam powered zeppelins. Yes, I said zeppelins. They do stuff with that. Steam powered coaches. If a DM is trying to figure out how to justify having clockwork constructs in their world, look up Tinkerno. They give it to you because that's the entire thing is mechanical BS, science BS. So they're really, so it's like if you're trying to justify any of that stuff for why non high fantasy or non magical stuff is there. Gnomes. You could just use rock gnomes, but tinker gnomes would probably be better suited for it because if you put all six of these gnomes, or four, because again the wild is just the wilderness version of the tinker, and the mad is the I want to be a mad scientist all by myself over there. So if you take these four different gnomes, put them in the room, the one that's going to be definitely going, where's something I can fiddle with? Where's the mechanical thing? You guys want to talk science? It's going to be the tinker gnome. Uh,
And then so it's the Tinker Gnomes that run into the Arcanum problem where science and magic are pushing against each other for dominance.
to a certain degree, yeah, they're also really good at chemical stuff. It's like the tinker gnome takes a hit on wisdom because they common sense sort of out the window with them. Uh, they get the physical hit to strength because they're not physically hit, but they get a bonus to dexterity and intelligence. So they're smart and agile. They're so small size. They're always affiliated with some sort of guild, however. Like, there is no, I'm a tinker gnome and I have no affiliations. It's like, no, you have an affiliation. It's part of being a tinker gnome. While it's some sort of craft guild, technological guild, sage guild, you're a part of a guild. Uh, they get a bonus to craft tinkering, which is an actual skill, and craft alchemy. Bonus on will saves. Not just like, oh, bonus on will saves for this. It's just a flat +2 on will saves. So like other gnomes and stuff where like I get bonus against this stuff here. It's like I get bonus just to this here and everything it covers. No level adjustment at all. So they're decent when play. Then when you get into the Mad Tinkers, they have a lot of the similar stuff that the Tinker has, except they don't have the intelligence bonus or the take the wisdom hit. They get a bonus to disabling devices and opening locks. They still keep the +2 on bones on will saves, and they get the
The
extra.
plus two on disabling locks, the plus two on disabling locks and stuff. I mean, how else do you expect them to get in and get the components that nobody wants them to get?
I'm gonna unlock this, and then I'm gonna use disable device to get what I want out of it. They also get the added trick of their favorite class is the class they your first level's taken in. So they have the human feature of your first class is your favorite class. So unlike like normal gnome, oh, actually Tinker Gnomes, it says right there. Uh, so yeah. So unlike traditional gnomes, that flat out tells you that like what your favorite their favorite class is. There's a normal gnome, a rock gnome, is bard. When you get into the deep gnomes, it's rogue. When you get into forest gnomes, it's also bard. Uh, while these ones, from ones, with the tinker and the mad gnome, it's whatever it takes. While wild gnomes are rangers, and they take the hit to strength, a hit to charisma, but a bonus to constitution and intelligence. So they're smart and hardy. Bonus to handle animal and knowledge, nature, and survival, which is always good. Craft, alchemical, and tinkering. Oh no, sorry, it says I misread. This is all your fault. It replaces the alchemy and the tinkering bonus. They get a +2 on saving throws against poison and disease. So instead of having the will bonus, it's a +2 against poison and disease. Instead of being good at like alchemy and tinkering, they're better with handling animals, knowledge, nature, and survival. Even though in their thing, it's yeah, it's like right here. Wild gnomes are a distinct change of pace from the standard tinker gnomes. That they have just as much of the gnomish tenacity to want to experiment and research as their cousins. Uh, If you want a new approach to a wilderness oriented class, such as a druid or a ranger, or you just like gnomes but not their inventions and gadgets, wild gnomes are the way to go. Because they still are into doing that stuff, it's just wild gnomes are more into not being so 100% focused. While mad gnomes are like, I kind of want to go be by myself right now and make stuff. Cheap. Like the
What?
no, I'm under the chat thing popped up. Not exactly sure why he said cheap. That's huh. That makes me somewhat curious, but not necessarily enough to stop everything. But no, when it comes to I said when it comes to campaigns with the Tinker Gnome is a better example of trying to introduce steampunk or more mechanical aspects to a game without having to feel you have to sacrifice non mechanical things in order to make it fit. Does Gnome still do stuff with magic? It's still one of the big things. Just like I said, even though deep gnomes are rogue, I like to be rogues, while forest and rock like to be bards. They still have the potential to be really good sorcerers or really good wizards because they are heavily associated also with the arcane arts because some of the stuff that they utilize for the creation of the uh, work creatures involve not just mechanical aspects of clockworking for all the gears and stuff, but then magic that powers it. Uh, there are certain things that are called golems, but they're technically not, that are just mechanical things they're calling golems, or they're golem like because their heavy magic is associated with powering them.
And they're still a pain in the butt to defeat as guards. So
Yeah. Um
you think Hulk smash?
uh one of my favorite clockwork is the Clockwork Guardian. This looks menacing, is somewhat menacing. Messing. Its right arm is pretty much just has a huge. The hand is replaced by a big freaking ball. So it's like I'm just gonna do lots of bludgeoning damage to you, and it's not treated as an unarmed strike. It's treated as me hitting you with a freaking mace, because that's technically what it is. It's beating you with a freaking mace. While its left arm has attached a shield that's a really awesome shield that as a move action it can deploy the shield. Does all the gears and stuff on the shield make the shield a lot bigger, so if you thought you need tower shields to make the perfect shield wall, no, you just need a single Clockwork Guardian because they'll just puff that down there, and it not only is a wall stopping you from hitting it, but also extends like 5 feet to the right and 5 feet to the left to make an actual barricade. Where other clockworks can set up to help make sure if someone's trying to push it, they can't push it. But it's like, hey, I want to block off this area. Wall. And it's also not just long, it goes up a couple feet too. So trying to get over it, it becomes somewhat harder. So it's like something that looks extremely menacing. And it's still capable of moving with it deployed like that. But it goes from like a 30-foot land speed to a 10-foot land speed. So its speed takes a hit. Uh,
But
it's a
does it
huge hit,
matter?
but it
No.
doesn't matter because you have a wall moving forward, and you know that at any moment it's going to retract that wall, and a bundle more clockworks are going to come charging forth to mess up your entire day. So it gets into the entire conundrum of how you can defeat this, or the conundrum of where they come from. They are, even though magic is used to as the reason why they are able to do what they are able to do. They're also extremely effective clockwork machines. So Tinker Gnomes are the perfect source on where these entities came from. And there's all sorts of other random constructs that are technically clockwork that you could say comes from them, like the Iron Defenders, which are clockwork dogs, the steam powered steed, which is a clockwork horse powered by water, the clockwork dragon. Uh, yeah, there's just a bundle of different things that you can introduce that are more mechanical and robotic in nature, even though they still need magic to function. But the perfect way to introduce them is through Tinker Gnomes. They're the ones that designed it. They're the ones that started making it, producing it, selling, or people are that's the source on where people started to rip off for like weaker versions of it, cheaper versions of it.
Versions that break
Yeah,
every other use.
pretty much, yeah. And it's because it's part of their. It can be easily worked as part of their stick, so you don't have to heavily rely on rock gnomes, because a lot of people like to go, but their favorite class is gnome. What do you mean they like making things with bells and whistles? What do you mean they're gonna have this over here? They're bards. They like singing, dancing, and partying. It's like that. You're not wrong, but you're technically also not right, because all it really is gonna take is for someone to go, yeah, they like doing this, but this is their day job versus their nightlife. Don't confuse the two; they're not the same. The tinker lets you have gnomes that are less about partying, less about frolicking, less about being the social butterfly, and more about I make things. I know science. I am really good with these knowledges and these crafts. Ask me a question. I am a great sage. So you can play into the whole here's the gnome you find in the engine of your car versus there's the gnome you find at the club, a club dancing naked on the tables because he's too drunk to notice.
right? Because engines created by gnome run on gnome power.
Pretty much. That's an easy way to state it. Uh,
Well, I
yeah.
mean, you did say that there was a gnome in the engine of the car, so
Well, that's like where you would find it. It's not necessarily like running on a wheel to do it, but uh, it's like if it
no, those
existed
are
in
hamster
real
wheels for gnomes. Awesome.
hamster wheel. Uh, it's one of those things that if the gnomes existed in real life, uh, you go to your mechanic shop. There's a good chance there's Tinker Gnomes there, because they're going to be really good at figuring out what's wrong with your vehicle and then fixing your vehicle while somehow adding extra bells and whistles and probably something that makes it work better, better better. So you may go into, I need an oil change, and you come out with a car saying, okay, my oil's been changed, but for some weird reason, my like I have this extra thing over here. Why is that there? Because it's making my oil capacity a lot better. What's this over here? Oh, it increases the efficiency of the oil put in. Because, well, it just fucking does. Why does my car make bell sounds whenever I'm going? It's because they somehow put working bells in the wheels, so as they spin, those bells make noises. What's that whistling sound? Well, you know how you have the exhaust pipe, right? Well, they turned that into a whistle because
All for free.
it's like, and I'm being charged for the oil change. The gnomes, yeah. So you technically made my engine run better because it's better oil efficiency and capacity, all for the price of changing my oil. Yeah, I don't want to know what you need to do when I need an entire like engine switch.
Well, the price was adding bells to everything and a whistle, so you sound like a party vehicle.
Pretty much. Everyone knows where you're coming. If they existed in the movie The Quiet Place, they would be the first ones to die. They can't keep quiet
Yes.
because bells and whistles, bells and whistles. Uh but moving to some of the stuff with just the normal rock gnomes, because they generally get along with a lot of people. Um Lightweight. They can live like almost 500 years. Uh Yeah, it's like the absolute oldest one can get without the aid of magic. Magic is 500. So they live a long time. It's like they're another race that outlives humans. It's like an average gnome reaches adulthood at 100. Well, not 100, but I looked at the wrong thing. At 40 years of age. So they
Only a
have
few years after the human.
well, humans mature at 15. So
I,
that
I
there's
did
25
say a
year
few years
difference.
after,
It's not a few,
not
that's
much.
several decades. Um, but it's
Well,
another.
it's better than elves.
The elves are mature at 110. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but but yeah, they are another race that outlives humans by centuries. Just how dwarves and elves outlive humans, gnomes also outlive humans. So yay. Uh, But
Why
some of the
humans
neat
break
stuff
that reference?
that the base rock gnome gets, uh, besides the hit to strength and the bonus to con, because they're not physically strong, but they are physically tough. So they can take a hit, but not necessarily give it. Small size, which really does help them with the hiding part. They're not fast because all gnomes have a 20-foot speed, so they're quite sluggish compared to other races. Low light vision, they get to use the gnome hook hammers as martial weapons. They get if this is something that starts to somewhat make them different from like the Tinker Gnome, they get a +2 racial saving throws against illusions. So any sort of illusion magic that's hit on them, they get that bonus to the corresponding saving throw versus that illusion.
Well, that would be because their favorite magic class is
It,
illusionist.
well, no, their favorite's Bard. Bard does a lot of weird stuff.
No, that would be
Uh,
favorite class, favorite magic class. Every time you
oh yeah,
look at a
is
at what magic class is a gnome going to be, it's illusionist. There's illusionist, illusionist.
does they do like messing people's minds? Uh, they get a +1 on the difficult class for all saving throws against illusion spells they cast. So if it's an illusion spell, the DC automatically goes up by 1. They get a bonus to hit against goblinoids and kobolds. So they're definitely like, oh, if you're a goblinoid, I have an easier time hitting you. If you're a lizard, I mean, you're a kobold, easier time hitting you. Yay! Because those are their main enemies. They do get the big bonus to AC against giants. So they're right up there with the dwarves, as like the dwarves do have an easier time fighting goblinoids and orcs when it comes to hitting, and then they get the bonus against giants. Gnomes are kind of like right there with them, but it's like goblins and kobolds, and not getting hit by giants. +2 to listen and alchemy checks, so they're really good at just naturally hearing and making really potent drinks. They get speak with animals once a day, burrowing only. If your charisma score is high enough, you get once a day dancing lights, ghost sound, prestidigitation, which are all nifty spells. So they are a decent race to pick. Well, yeah, there's really no other than their like possibly size, which means they do less damage because they use small size weapons. I think that would be the only thing that would make them not good. But then you also have the halflings have the same problem. But at the same time, it's still decent. Uh, the differences for the wood gnome, well, forest gnome, is they pretty much get all of that stuff. Um, but they also get pass without trace. Uh, they get to use it self only as a free action. So it's not like everyone gets it. It's at any time they want. There go. Can't chase me because I'm untrackable. They keep the +1 against kobolds and goblins, but they also get orcs and reptilianoid humanoids added to it. Actually, I'm double checking something. Yeah, they're slightly better at hitting orcs and reptilianoids than a rock gnome is. Uh, and they get additional bonus on high checks in forests. Well, additional bonus. with a even bigger bonus if they're in woodland areas. So besides being small sized, which already gives you +4 on hide checks, they get an additional +4 bonus on high checks, which means they have a +8 starting out, which is high. The moment they get into woodlands, it jumps by additional +4. So not counting ranks, not counting dexterity, they have a plus
Love
12
seeing
in
it.
the woods. So it good luck finding them if they're not trying to be found.
Well, and so, criminal gnomes, they get into the forest, and whoever's looking for them
Can't find them,
loses them.
pretty much. Now the deep gnomes have a level 3, will have a +3 level adjustment, which is a lot. Favorite class rogue. Now what they get are a lot. These traits are in addition to the gnome traits with accepted words noted. They take the strength hit, they get a dexterity and a wisdom bonus, and a big charisma hit. They're not very charismatic. Like, They get the stone cutting
But do they need
ability,
to be
which makes them really good with stonework and the whole they walk by a secret door or unusual stonework, and they get the DM gets to do a his little hidden roll to see if they notice them or not. So it's pretty much they have the dwarven trait there. They get both low light vision and a 120 dark vision, which is a really far dark vision. You may not think like 120
dark
feet
vision of what?
being that like 120 feet. That's not far enough. When in most cases, when it comes to dark vision, 60 feet is considered just really good because most of the time when you're trying to look for a bad guy or fight the monster, they're not going to be farther than 60 feet trying to hurt you if you're in an area where dark vision is needed. Like a dark hallway of a dungeon. Most of the time, they're not even 30 feet long, and if they are, 60 feet is usually where you're seeing where it ends or turns off. If you're in a cavern, unless you have a light source, a lot of the stuff there is relying on its 60-foot dark vision to even notice you. It may go, I hear something in that distance that way, but then they have to move towards it, get within that um, line of sight for for them to actually get a chance to see you, which is normally when you can see them. So having 120 dark vision is can be labeled as excess because why? Because when you're in caverns, it's not just an empty tunnel. There's usually stalactites, stalagmites, random rocks, weird curves or bends of the tunnel. It's not like a Coco, come here. It's not like a dungeon where it's like there's nothing between you and the other end. So it's like why it's ex it has lots of excess. So in order to make use of it, you have to be either somehow flying in the middle of the tunnel, if the tunnel's actually that big enough to actually permit flight, or like crawling high up on the wall of it so that way you're seeing over a lot of stuff. So dark vision is one of those things that after a point it's just why? Because you're out seeing most, if not everything else with dark vision. Because like even
Because
other
gnomes,
creatures,
that's
yeah, because even other creatures that have dark vision, typically it's 60 feet. It's rare. It's uncommon to rare to have any above that. So to go, I can see twice as far as everyone else in darkness. It's a big deal. They get it. Spell resistance, which is a high spell resistance of 11 plus their class level, meaning they start out with a 12. For those of you who don't know what spell resistance is, it's whenever someone or something casts a spell on you that can be affected by spell resistance, they have to do a caster check to see if the spell works on you. This is before saving throws come into play. This is just to see if the spell works on you. If they equal or if they get a total that's equal to or less than your spell resistance, it auto fails. So 12 may not seem that good, but it gets higher as you get higher level, which means the higher caster level, whatever it is, has to be able to affect you. So at 12, like I said, they have to be able to beat a 12. In order to beat a 12 without having to stress it, which would be, let's just say, because the average die roll on a d20 is 10, in order to beat a 12 without having to stress it, you have to be at least a third level caster. And that's just assuming a 10 is rolled, which is the average result. But the likelihood of a 10 being rolled for you, it's completely random. It's a die roll. It could get less than a 10. It could get greater than a 10. So unless you have stuff that increases your spell penetration, like defeat, because there's two of them, the spell penetration and greater spell penetration, that increases your caster level check in regards to bypassing spell resistance. It doesn't cover all of the aspects of the spell. It just makes you better at bypassing an SR of target. And that's something that if a trend happens in the campaign you're playing in where that SR becomes a problem, there's your solution. There's two spells that help you with it. Uh, so a race being able to start with it is a big deal. Because normally you have to cast either the greater spell resistance spell or find something that gives you some ridiculous SR. Next, they get a +2 on all saving throws. All saving throws. So unlike like the Tinker Gnome that gets a +2 on all will saving throws, or like normal gnomes that get a +2 against illusions on the saving throws, deep gnomes are +2 flat out to all three. +2 to fort, +2 to reflex, +2 to will, which is really, really good. Uh, who is messaging me? Oh, that has nothing to do with me. They keep the +1 on the divinity class for all illusion spells they cast. Does they keep that? They keep the +1 against kobolds and goblinoids. They keep the bonus to AC, but instead of it being just against giants, their dodge bonus applies to all creatures. So if you think that's not a big deal for anyone who's watching this, it is a big deal because it means the deep gnomes, not counting armor, not counting dexterity, start with a 15 AC because they get +1 for being small sized and a +4 for being a deep gnome. So as long as it's classified as a creature attacking, they get the +4 dodge bonus. So it doesn't apply against traps. It only applies to if it's a creature, which constructs do count as creatures. Traps don't count as creatures. So technically, it's a very niche thing that they have to worry about. But their favorite class is also Rogue, and Rogue gives them stuff to help with traps. So it's like they already got that covered. Uh, they do get spell-like abilities, like blindness/deafness once a day, blur, disguise self, and their caster level for them is equal to its total level. And the DC is charisma based with an additional +4 racial modifier. So it those DCs, yeah, those DCs start out at a 14. So it's like the only thing that's hitting them is their huge Dex penalty. Well, not Dex penalty, but their huge charisma penalty. That's the only thing they have to worry about. But having all these spell like abilities I get, they're DC 14, which means when they're like, I want to blind you or deafen you, DC 14 is what you have to beat, not counting their charisma, which is really good for a spell like ability. They get non detection in constant effect, which means detect magic won't tell them where you are, locate creature won't tell them where they are. If they're holding an item, you can't cast detect object to find that item. Scrying doesn't work on them because non-detection protects in layman's terms, any form of divination-based spell or observation-based spell automatically fails to detect them. And when it comes to trying to beat that, their class level is their effective caster level for that effect. So if you're like, well, this stuff here can beat that non-detection, but it's this versus this. It's well, oh, he's level 10. Well, that's what you have to compete with him being level 10. They still get a bonus to craft alchemy and listen. And they still get a racial bonus to hide checks, which is a +2. And if they're in the underground, which is in the underground, so in a cave, so anything that counts as underground, it turns into a +4. So they get a lot. Now that being said, for people that want to play a deep gnome, there is technically three different deep gnomes. There's the core deep gnome, which is what everything I just put. There's the Forgotten Realms deep gnome, which are more bad guy than good guy. They have all the same stuff, but they're more the bad guy. Uh, so it's like you can't really in that you can't really plead them because they're considered with the evil races. Uh, so it's a weird domino shift of they're one of the good guys that's fighting the evils of the Underdark versus they're one of the evils of the Underdark. The other deep gnome comes from the kingdoms of Kalamar, and it doesn't get all that stuff. It gets some of it. So it doesn't get the spell resistance. It doesn't get the spell like abilities, the stone cutting. It loses a lot, but here's a playable deep gnome that you don't have to wait to join a higher level campaign or anything like that. Because here's a deep gnome you can actually play without it. They're also go by Mythar. The steep gnomes do go by another name which I can't ever pronounce. Can someone pronounce it for me?
The Silverbliven.
Yeah, Silverbliven. Because even in Forgotten realms, they go by that, but in the kingdoms, they go by Mythar. Like even the rock gnomes are similar but slightly different, and they go by a Delug, and the forest gnomes go by Fulmara, and they're also slightly different. Uh, so it's one of those you can say in all, just from what I've been the digging of, 12 different gnomes. But
That are almost the same.
the problem is when it comes to these gnomes, it it's technically not 12 different gnomes at their core, because the Forgotten Realms, Rock Gnome, Forest Gnome, and Deep Gnome are like 95% the same as the core Rock, Forest, and Deep. It's just slightly different cultural stuff. Just mainly culture to get into. But then in the kingdoms, the Rock Gnome and Forest Gnome are in that bracket of just being similar but slightly different culture. Well, the Deep Gnome, statistic wise, is a lot more different. So they're all the same but different. It's like even the Mad Gnome and the Wild Gnome are just variants of the Tinker Gnome. So you at its core, it's technically four base gnomes with their variants. There's even the Mad Gnome is also referred to as the Mad Tinker Gnome or the Tinker Mad Gnome. So it's slightly like, so they are not as versatile as like dwarves when it comes to their race, the different dwarves, or the elves when it comes to their elves. Um, but at the same time, they're still highly versatile in the different gnomes, slightly different play styles and attitudes. And my recommendation as a long term DM would be, if you're trying to have a world be either have more reasonable gnomes for technological stuff or just have funner gnomes, switch out what gnomes you're pulling from where. Like if you want people to play deep gnomes because they want to play deep gnomes, pull up the Forgotten, oh not the Forgotten, but pull up the Kingdoms of Calamar's Player's Guide and do that deep gnome. You may have people complaining that it's not the same because it's not there. Those people are that they're mid-max power gamers. They're not doing it because it's cool. They're not doing it because it's a neat thing. It's not. They're not doing it because not everyone plays a deep gnome because not everyone wants to play a deep gnome. They're just give me a rock gnome. They're doing it solely for the statistical benefits that the core deep gnome gives. So you just look at those people and go, fine, you're not playing a deep gnome then. Uh, like if you want more steampunk stuff or sci-fi related stuff in it, Tinker Gnome. You don't need the Mad Tinker Gnome or the Wild Gnome, but the Tinker Gnome is a easy way to justify in that world steampunk at its core because steam powered stuff is can be heavily associated with them. Same with clockwork related stuff. Um, like there's one world that I wish they somewhat took that approach with gnomes in, and it's Eberron. Just Eberron, you can find things that make you go, "Wait, why is that here? Why do they have electric powered trains and actual working airships like the big zeppelins and stuff? Like, why are those there? Why is there boats, but they're not using sails or oars? It's because they're using elemental infused technologies to power their railway system for their trains, to make their airships fly and are actually able to move, to make their ships move. They did it because it was Eberron, not because they gave it a real actual reason. Like, oh, there's all this stuff here because gnomes are boom. They just went, oh, it's there because it's there, which is a big thing about certain worlds. There's certain stuff that says it's there because it's there. No other reason other than it's there. That's how a lot of stuff gets justified. So I think it's a kind of
Finish your sentence.
no, I just read something in the chat, which I'm happy it's for some reason auto restricting. Um, but no, it's like it's a lazy approach to just not have certain things be justified or explained certain ways using the oh it's there because it's there is a kind of lazy way. I would admit there's a lot of stuff that what's here because it's here because I want it here. Uh, but I'm also a fan of having a reason, having some cause for the effect other than just having it there for argument's sake. Like in the world of I built, there's Golem armor, which is heavily magic infused armor that technically does have clockwork stuff in it, but I already have a race that created those, a race that did their stuff, and that race is gone, and they took all that means of manufacturing them and properly, technically keeping them in 100% condition. They're all gone, so what's there is left. You don't have access to it anymore. I already explained that, not through gnomes, but through another race. But and that's because I didn't just want to have something there that's like this is cool. I want it there more for background stuff, but then I gave it a reason why it was there, a reason why you can't get it anymore. Because like, I didn't want to take the lazy approach, and that's one of the reasons why I do like gnomes in the broad sense. That if anyone asks why you're going a certain route, you go gnomes. It's the conclusion of how gnomes work to why certain things could possibly show up a few centuries before they logically would. There's like one of the things that you can set use to set why humans apart from other races is their short lives kind of force them into learning stuff a lot quicker and trying to innovate a lot quicker. So certain things develop a lot faster because of humans than other races because those other races have centuries to do stuff, centuries to work on crap. There's like when you have like from the day you're born to the day you die, like 90 years maximum for a human to learn a trade, actively uh, do the trade, and then somehow advance the trade. They have to do it within a shorter window than everyone else. Just like we talked about before, dwarves can live up to 450 years. 450 years. That's a long time to live. And because of that, they don't have that rush. They don't have that niche need to complete it within this tiny short lifespan. They go, I have like at minimum a century plus to do this. Elves that can live up to 750 years go, I literally can take like 5 centuries to work on a project. Humans can't do that. Gnomes that can reach up to 500 years also have that. I I have more time to work out details. I have more time to uh, screw around and find out. I can make all these mistakes. I don't have to be so precise. I can do random stuff and then look at the outcome and go, "Oh wow, I accidentally created a working light bulb. I accidentally figured out how to generate electricity." Because they can make all those mistakes. Because humans can't afford to make those mistakes. They can't. Because they have, from the moment they reach adulthood, to get all that information into making practical use. So even though they mature years before everyone else, uh, like they mature 5 years faster than halflings, 25 years before a gnome, 25 years before a dwarf, 95 years before an elf. So by the time pretty much the other races are reaching adulthood, the humans are already doing jobs. They're already working, and they've been in the field for years. In some cases, decades. In one particular case, they're dead. Because again, elves maturing at 110 kind of means that like several human generations have gone by before they're actually mature. So gnomes, because they get to make those mistakes, they have the years to do it. They can suddenly take their random mistakes, take their random I accidentally did this, but then I decided to perfect that accident, and now we have this working stuff here. You can do it because they've been working on it so long. They know what's going to fail and how it's going to fail because they've had the time to do it. So when the gnomes go in, so when gnomes start actually utilizing their fruits of their endeavors, the society they're in can appear to almost overnight jump technology wise because the gnomes go from this is in my workshop to now I'm selling it to the public without the huge risk that humans run into of the chance of something going wrong with someone dying because the gnomes worked out those kinks already. So even though it may seem like it may take like 1 or 2 centuries before an individual gnome comes up with something that could change an entire society, when it does, it changes the entire society by leaps and bounds. Because they work that hard, they work that much. Because even though they have the time that dwarves and elves do, technically a little bit more time than a dwarf, they produce things a lot faster and more efficiently because they're constantly working. They'll also have like 3 or 4 projects going at the same time, while dwarves are just, I gotta master the technique to make this sword the best sword ever, so I can make the best swords ever. Elves going, I can take like 3 centuries on painting this one painting, even though it's like, why take 3 centuries? It's like because I want to get it perfect. Gnomes are like, I just spent like 20 years on 5 different projects. Uh, Here's better suspensions for carts and wagons. Why is that a big deal? Well, because it means less breaking of wheels, less breaking of suspension stuff for the cart, and the entire cart, wagon, approach you put it onto runs a lot smoother. So it's easier on the horse, it's easier on the driver, it's easier on anything you bought in. Because like even if you look in real life history, when you go from cars that don't have the suspension, first cars that have suspension, it's a different feeling when you're in that vehicle. Uh, and the things you can transport broaden a lot more. Because in the earliest cars, when you're going along, it's all bumpy and boom. There's certain things you can't transport port because it's going to break. Suspensions come in, it's less bumpy, more stable. Uh, so when the gnomes do that, it's a big deal. So it's easier in that campaign to explain all that stuff because gnomes, again, because they work on multiple projects, and when they go, here's what I got, let's see what we can do with it. It's a big deal because like a lot of people don't understand just how effective steam power is. And going back to real life history, if you look at the boats that aren't steam powered for steam powered boats, what one wins? You can respond to that.
Oh, well, steam power, of course.
Do you know why it
Thought
wins?
it was rhetorical for the people watching.
uh, but do you know why it wins?
Goes faster, less manpower.
Exactly. It may cost more in the long run versus a boat that uses mast and or oars, but less manpower. It's like in one of the campaigns I'm working on right now. You guys are going to be trying your best to sail in a war canoe, which in order to have the oars on it go efficiently, you have to have 12 oarsmen. If I were to get,
I don't see a paddle. I don't see a steam paddle being added to this thing.
well, I'm not saying it's going to, but if I would say it's like, oh, here's a steam powered boat over here, the length at time you're going to be able to go is going to be drastically increased. You don't have to rely on wind. You can go against wind with a steam powered boat, and you're not going to need 12 rowers to row the boat for oars. You're going to need at least one person to maintain the engine, uh, one person to probably make sure the paddles on it, because a lot of steam powered boats are wheel boats, and at least one or two people to make sure that the amount of burnt combustibles are going in the engine to fuel the engine. So a portion of your cargo is coal, because that's a really efficient way to keep steam powered boats going. But the length of the travel becomes not so harrowing because you're using less people, you have more supplies to last longer and stuff, and it just works wonders. The only downside is if somehow something clogs the steam vents, it's a bomb. All it's going to take is that pressure to hit a certain point, and it blows up. That's like the only actual true downside to it. So just making sure no one does something stupid or bad guys don't get to it because they just close a bunch of valves, bend them, squish them so not enough pressure can be really released, and
Gnomes.
it hits a point and boom. That's also why having a gnome on board to maintain it, they're gonna love maintaining it because a lot of times with steam powered stuff, there is a lot of whistles going off because that you got to release a certain amount of pressure. You got to make sure the pressure doesn't go too much. There's emergency release valves and pulleys and stuff to do all sorts of random stuff. So they're gonna love it. So you can justify all that stuff because of gnomes. In some cases, like for instance, Forgotten Realms, uh, gnomes, like forest gnomes, uh, are associated with firearms because they're known for being really good craftsmen when it comes to making them. So much so that gnomes inherently, no matter what society they're in, get to spend less money to acquire those things because it, it's a 10% decrease in price to buy that gun, to buy the ammo for the gun, to buy the gunpowder to make it work. They get it all cheaper, which is pretty freaking amazing. But that's just because they're really good at that type of thing. So there's a pivotal turn a campaign or a world could take towards technology, and you can have the catalyst be gnomes. And if anyone tries to argue against it, they can't because now you're going against gnomes. They are about progress. They are about doing tinkering. So let's not fight the gnomes, but join the gnomes in their gnominess. Uh, You know, it's things like this that make me happy. There's not like a million and one different gnomes.
Good.
Because we pretty much covered everything.
Yes.
Their height, I mean, how tall they actually are, how much they actually weigh, their age, a lot of their social cues,
Yes, everything.
pretty much. Which means we can technically we can wrap this baby up. Because the gnomes so far are the easiest race we've covered so far. Mainly because there's not a crap ton many of them.
Which is good.
So to summarize it up, uh,
Gnomes
yeah, to
make stuff.
summarize gnomes are great tinkerers. They're great innovators. No matter really what gnome you're pulling from, they're all kind of known for that. Uh, they're they kind of like to be goofy and fun. Uh, they'd rather not actually kill their opponents unless it's on the list of ones they get bonuses to attack, like goblinoids and kobolds. It's on site combat with them.
No,
Uh,
no, they'd rather tinker with the opponents that they knock out.
yeah. Uh, we're covering these. So they can be a blast to play or to play with. Uh, they can make great background characters or forefront characters, NPC wise and stuff. They can just be great in the fun. Uh, they can be used to justify certain catalysts in worlds when it comes to tech wise based things, which can help DMs that want less magic and more tech in. But they are generally just a chill race. Uh, so yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
watching. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
This is going up on YouTube when we're all done here. Please remember to like and subscribe.